Yo, when I spit bars in a raid, man, I go hard like Santan.
Whoa, welcome. A fair amount of the streets were demanding it, and now here we are, Touchline Hotspur live with an emergency pod. We're here, Touchline Hotspur, aka the European Super League qualifiers, aka Church of Tanguy. We're here. Today I'm very blessed to be joined with some very good speakers in our higher side. Si, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was slow on the news ticker today. New job energy in that. Pats on the back and that. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Man, Drake, congratulations on repeat. I hear it. Hi, how you doing, man?
Similar boat to Sai. Like literally, I just wasn't really with it today in terms of my phone. I was sleeping on the football news all day. Saw my phone, 534 messages in the Touchline Hotspur. My boys are messaging saying, "What do you think of Jose going?" I said, "What are you talking about?" Do you know what I mean? So it's been. I think I literally just saw a little bit of the Super League stuff last night, and I don't look at me like that. If you know, you know, man. But yeah, like it's just been a weird day as a football fan, as a Spurs fan, you know, as someone who, it's just been a weird day, man. But I'm ready. I'm ready to kick it. Emergency pod. I ain't been on a pod with Sai since we went toe to toe with Robbie. You know what I mean? So it's been, yeah, I'm ready to cook, man. I'm ready to cook.
Yeah, we were taking some licks from that weekend onwards, man. So it's good to kind of have this landmark moment happen in football. For the context, like a lot of the group were talking until 2 a.m. in the morning. We then fell asleep and then we woke up to some more news today. But again, we'll fully get into it. But firstly, I have to do my due diligence as the host and do just a few small plugs. Let's see, this discussion about the European Super League was covered on the main Touchline Fracas podcast, so please give that a listen as well. On the Discord, there was great discussion on it earlier. And shout out to Tobes as well, obviously part of our Superstar podcast lineup. Did an emergency stream while at work and had a few lovely guests on as well as myself. So yeah, feel free to check all of that out because, man, there's just so much to cover. But anyway, statement for the European Super League came out last night. Now, there was some rumblings. About it during the day, which I wasn't even sure that I believed. And then, see, Gary Neville did his thing on Sky Sports, and it kind of gaslit and virtual signaled quite a lot of football fans, I have to say. And then it was a bit dodgy, I have to say. They came up with their statements at 11 p.m. UK time last night, in and around, to announce the league officially, which would have been midnight gone in all the other European countries. And they announced the European Super League format, which will consist of 12 teams, including Tottenham Hotspur. I believe their format is looking to have another 5 qualifying slots as well, followed by the UEFA Champions League, then announcing their reformat starting in 2024, more or less suggesting the same thing, but just with more teams, a league, and then there'll be a knockout round depending on the top 3 or top 4 of this initial league. It's one of those things. A lot of people have been voicing their opinions on social media, and I feel like there's been a huge nuanced disconnect from the initial reaction. There was people saying they're going to leave the Premier League entirely, or they're not going to be supporting lower league and grassroots football. So I'll put the question to you first, Si. Is this an ethical tournament?
No, that's the long and short of it. It's not ethical, but football hasn't been ethical for the better part of 20 years, in my estimation. So who the fuck cares? That's literally where I have to stand on this. I'd like to pride myself in being somewhat of a man of principle and a man with morals, but we're talking about big corporations. So all of that went out the window when we started dealing with billionaires. That's the first point. The second point is we're talking about FIFA and UEFA potentially having power stripped away from them. What's not to love?
That's scary. Oh no.
Precisely. I think with any sort of ethical discussion, the word disruption is quite important. And anything that disrupts the status quo is a good thing by my estimation, even if it means you're dealing with a 3-headed devil as opposed to a 2. At some point, everything's going to burn to the ground, and they're going to have to rebuild. So, if what I think will happen happens, we'll get a good product out of it by the end of it.
Yeah, it's a strong point to touch upon. Some of the hypocrisy and kind of ethical points when it comes to UEFA and FIFA in particular. Let's see how UEFA deals with race in general. There's obviously harsher punishments for advertising and many other things than a player being racist on a football pitch. So, and then you've got FIFA, who are still planning on hosting a World Cup in Qatar, which has over 6,000 deaths to the workers who have been working on that Qatari World Cup. And, there's been protests and such and such, players wearing shirts, protesting against it. But, who's going to boycott it? Are the fans going to boycott it? Are the players going to boycott it? No, absolutely not. So, does it warrant the backlash, though? Because I think the most important points for me as well is the competition side of it, where there is no relegation and the teams have essentially picked themselves, being the main thing. What have your initial thoughts been on that? Because I feel like your thoughts have been a little bit indifferent recently.
Yeah, one thing I like to do, especially as a Spurs fan, is I don't let Spurs stress me out. And in the same vein, I don't let football stress me out at all. So, I appreciate that football means a lot of things to a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's some Spurs fans that I know from way back of very sound mind that have got more of a sentimental vibe. ESL doesn't speak to their morals as a football fan, which is very much their entitlement. I think just to go back earlier to a point about the ethics before the relegation stuff, and someone else made a good point. It's like, just because there's been corruption and hypocrisy before doesn't mean you can't call out hypocrisy and corruption now, which is somewhat a fair point. But it's been a sliding slope for a long time. When we talk about ethics, is it ethical that Juventus are in a position where they've won Serie A 9 times in a row? Is it ethical that Bayern are about to match that, and it's a case where, we nearly lost it last year, who nearly cost us that? Lewandowski, come true. Do you know what I mean? Like, is that ethical? I don't know. PSG are potentially, obviously Lille's giving them a bit of trouble. PSG are about to go 8 out of 9. Do you know what I mean? And the 1 year that they slipped, they were like, oh, who's that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Donny up top? Let's buy him, because he cost us the league. And is that ethical? Do you know what I mean? And I appreciate, just because someone can not say too much about that and suddenly now have an issue of this, but it's like, I need to maintain the same energy. Do you know what I mean? Like, Sai, you were talking about all these the corporations and the tycoons who are coming into play to own these clubs. And obviously what Mike Ashley's been doing to Newcastle is unethical, in my opinion. It's been unethical. But high key, the only person that I would really be trying to hear the unethical chat from, weirdly enough, is Stan Collymore. Because Stan Collymore, since at least 2016, if not 2014, he has consistently, even up until last year, he's been like, I think fans should have 51% of the club and owners should have 49%. So it was like he was moving like an oracle. Do you know what I'm saying? He's been like this from the jump. So if you've been like Stan Collymore from then, I'm not too opposed to you having a big problem with it now. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's my view on ethics thing. Like, I think it's just indifferent. I'm not going to pretend I don't care necessarily. I'm just not really sure how to feel about it. So that's that. Ethically, to answer, yes, it is like ethically wrong per se, but there's a lot in football that's ethically wrong. We're not even going to talk about FFP today, but you know what I'm saying. And then with the no relegation thing, so I think a couple more details have come out since last night. So I believe it's 12. I think it's currently 12 founding members, potentially going to shift to 15. Streets are saying PSG are going to win the Champions League and then jump ship like Rick Ross in that music video. And that you can qualify for, but they've obviously not really like managed to iron out the details and stuff. So I think I quite like the essence of the big teams like playing each other. I wouldn't say I don't think it's going to be as high a frequency as everyone thinks it will be, but it would be nice to see, you know, like the like Madrid versus or Madrid slapping up Arsenal on more regular occasion. That would be great. But I don't like the fact that the 12 to 15 members are gonna 100% be in it all the time based on clout. I don't think that's fair. I think maybe every couple of years there should be some kind of, you know, I don't know, maybe where you finish in the league in like 4 years time, like a World Cup cycle per se. So maybe, you know, you have your founding members, you have the first 3 years, maybe 3-4 years of the ESL, and then when it comes to, you know, what word am I looking for? Requalification time for the founding members. You know, if you're moving a bit fugazi in the league and you don't really deserve to be there, then, you know, you should have to compete for it again. So I don't agree with like ring fencing the founding members. I think that in itself is unethical. I don't think that's fair. And I know we'll delve more into like the hypocrisy of a lot of things that have been said and stuff, but I think there's room for it to work. It's just them dropping it at the hour they did. That was it felt very Vince McMahon of them. It felt very Vince McMahon in terms of, I'm going to do this at a point. It was very much like surprise Royal Rumble entrant number 30. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm pretty sure this was the deadline that UEFA was supposed to submit the new 36 team format. So they definitely pick this time, pick this hour, pick this day to do it, because they know like UEFA can't sign shit with this up in the air. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, man, ethics is way off, but I'm here for entertainment. I'm not gonna lie, because at the minute it means Spurs are getting the bag. So I'm not gonna lie.
And this is what I want to touch upon as well, because you'd be lying if you're a Spurs fan and you're not entertaining the obvious benefits to this. And there's been a lot of talk and a lot of meme banter amongst the football world over Spurs' inclusion as a founding member, which is something I thought about, because at first I thought, we don't really deserve this at all. However, I'm solely basing it on this season, where we have been a joke. So starting on the ethic points, like for me with the European Super League and the ethics, if we ended up not being able to play in the domestic league, for me that's a bit sticky still. It's more, I know the Premier League's position, I know the owner's position is essentially just strong arming them to agree to let them to play in the European Super League just by virtue of having most of the power. Fair play. I think it will happen as well. I think the Premier League will let these teams play. I think the other domestic leagues will let the teams play. It will just be listening to the slice, listening to what they get out of it, the slice of the pie. I'm sure there's already been initial conversations between the owners and the Premier League in the background, and I'm sure there's going to be talk of money, and then they'll kind of shake hands, so to speak. For me as well, I do think it should be based on merit. But by virtue of that, we are a consistent top 6 finisher. I know this is more of like a Sky narrative than fans, but we have been consistent top 6 finishers for the past 5-6 years. We could still even finish in the top 6 this season. So I think our inclusion as a founding member is justified based on performance on the pitch, merit, also by stature of the club, which you have to give Levy enormous credit for, because there was an initial list of teams which were meant to be in it, which leaked. It was from 2018, 2019, and it included Marseille, Roma as amongst the teams which have been included in it, announced yesterday. No Tottenham. There was no Tottenham. So what Levy's done between now and then has been admirable. Now, I've got to be honest, because like it or not, this European Super League would happen with or without us. And if we hadn't have been included in it, boy, like we would truly be in the mud. We would truly be in the mud. So what I want to get into now is the potential benefits for Spurs. And it is conflicting because we do need more clarity on how this European Super League is going to work. And you could be opposed to it. And at the same time, you're thinking, oh, right, Kane's going to stay. Jack Grealish, come outside. Skriniar, what are you saying? So, Sai, I'd like to hear what you think, how this would benefit us. And is this what Levy would be doing as putting his piece on the table? Is this a big club move from us? And are we justified being founding members?
So I think the first bit to attack with that is obviously if we strip away the potential ramifications of not being able to play in a domestic competition and players going to the World Cup and Euros and things like that. Any Spurs fan that's upset about this, oh well, It's like, would you rather be in it or would you rather be on the outskirts? Because we've been on the outskirts of traditional top four. We've been sort of treated as if we're the bastard brother of the top six and all of this shit. Big club energy, innit? This is what you asked for. You asked for us to maneuver like a big club, and now we're doing it. That's the way I see it. Where it gets a little bit murky is, as you mentioned, the initial list didn't have us anywhere to be seen. So I imagine Levy as the geezer from the Fiery Fest documentary, just get the deal done by any means necessary.
Any means.
By any means. But that's the thing. Like I'm looking at this, and we have a seat at the table. Shout out to Solange. And what more could you ask for? I mean, at the end of the day, like we can talk about the trajectory of this club, and if we look over the last 15, 16 years, we've been working up to a position where we could be considered amongst the elite clubs in world football. Same with Arsenal, with their owners saying, "Oh, you can compete with Bayern," blah 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 blah. They're just getting to do it on a different stage now, so it's not wholly negative if we're talking about why these teams are there. We know what the financial reports and tables look like. We know what the commercial aspects and the sponsorships look like. We know that these are the most money-making clubs in world football. So let's just think of the Super League more as a Soho House situation than maybe a competitive competition. It's for the glamour. It's for the revenue. We know what it is, right? But that's not to say that at some point during the near future, maybe the stuff does get rejigged, because as with anything, when things start as exclusives, it garners more interest. The best way to garner more interest around exclusivity is to get a blue tick by somebody's name or some shit like that. So if we view it like that, in 5-10 years, maybe those founding members might have to earn their way back into the competition. And if that does happen, then all is good with the world, no? Because we're clearly operating within a structure within football that doesn't work for the smaller clubs. We see clubs in England getting dissolved and put into administration left, right, and centre, and none of the big clubs are wholeheartedly throwing their generosity at those clubs. The FA is not stepping in and saving those clubs. So for me personally, I think it's rich, a lot of the backlash. Like, we can talk about romanticism in football, but every conversation I get in is, what have you won? Are you a big club? What have you spent? What is your net spend? How can you compete if you don't have this? It's like, all right, cool. Now when we do get it, or if we utilize our increased profits and all of that shit for that, then we'll really get to see what we're made of. So ultimately, like, I have no issue with it. I think we deserve to be there if this is the remit and the criteria. And ultimately, again, middle fingers up to UEFA and FIFA. Same energy all day long.
100%. Again, like with certain clubs not being looked after as well, because I'd like to know how UEFA and the Champions League do funnel money down to some of the lesser or smaller European clubs who were European Cup champions before the Champions League reform. Because again, on the point we've touched on before, like we've seen players from Ajax just get cherry picked because they're essentially a feeder club now, where they are a club of like huge romanticism, huge heritage. AC Milan as well, they've suffered. Benfica, Red Star Belgrade as well, to a point. Like all of these teams have faded away just through essentially lack of funds, because it is a pay-to-win competition to a point, the UEFA Champions League. So I'd like to put the questions you are highlighting. Like, do you, in general, think we deserve to be a founding member? Because I think another point to touch upon, we've agreed to be in this tournament without relegation for 20 plus years. I believe it's 23 years. So do we deserve at this point to be in there? And are you entertaining some of these benefits which we look to gain?
I'd say we definitely do deserve to be there, and that is obviously not going to be an opinion shared by a lot of non-Spurs fans, which is fine, because it's my club, not yours. Do you know what I mean? And that's completely fair. Like, I think, you know, based on, like, we have been up until obviously last year where Bayern wiped the floor with us, we were like progressively, you know, showing what we were made of in Europe. You know what I'm saying? We got to a Champions League final with Winks and Sissoko. We have what we think about that night in Amsterdam, but we gave the world that night in Amsterdam. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it wasn't just like we got to one Champions League final and that was it. If we just sort of done 1-2 group stage here and then hit the final, it'd be a bit, there's some underhanded dealing going on. Do you know what I'm saying? Or Levy's got like skeletons in someone's closet that he would expose if we weren't allowed in. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say we don't belong there. Like, yeah, there's the whole, we don't have any trophies since 2008. Like, you know, we're the main thing we're clinging on to is, you know, Ledley King, we wish he never got injured, and, you know, Harry Kane should stay and all that kind of stuff. But I think it just goes to show that, you know, this whole "you're not a big club" thing, it's just hogwash, because like we've been telling you we are, and we obviously are, because the fact that whatever you think of Daniel Levy, whether you're in or out, and it out, like, we are a big club because we force ourselves into conversations with teams that win titles and we don't. So if we're not winning titles and yet people speak about us to the same degree as teams that do win titles and trophies, how are we not a big club? It just doesn't. It's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense.
Exactly that. Because I mean, how on earth would we even get a dedicated podcast on a beautiful brand like Touchline Fracas?
You know, it just doesn't make sense. You know?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I think on another point as well, which we should shout about, we should give ourselves credit for, other teams should give us credit for, is a lot of people have criticized billionaire owners for strong arming other leagues, and in this situation we don't. I mean, we technically have a billionaire owner in Joe Lewis, but we've grown and to be part of in this conversation amongst these big clubs organically. We haven't had these sugar daddy cash injections. Do you know what I mean? We've slowly built. It's been painful at times. There'll be valid criticism for Levy and Joe Lewis along the way, for sure, but we deserve, and Levy deserves, huge credit for growing this club to the point and to the place it is organically. And like you said,
that was literally my next thing. Like, going back to the ethics, like, if it's a mix of the ethics and why we should be in it. You know, Sai, you touched on the tycoons, the corporations, the millionaires. Yeah, we've got the millionaires, but it's always been a thing where it's like we're battling with a budget to try and get ahead of these guys, to keep up with these guys. We've been in title races with such a budget. And I mean this with the utmost respect to We Are Tottenham TV, you know, good platform, gets the fans involved. Like, I respect a lot of the work they do. And I'm not going to say whether, thank you, David Wiltshire Crane, for your comment. I just want to give him his airtime, just because that's why he's here. David Wiltshire Crane says, "What utter bullshit," and that's fine, because you're here watching it as we were. Thank you, Mr. Wiltshire Crane.
Almost really proved your point there, but literally.
Yeah. But as we were saying, in the honor of Wiltshire Crane, I think it's it to the We Are Tottenham TV. So they organised a protest today outside the stadium. I don't know if it went off. I don't know how many people were there, etc., etc. And I asked this off the Touchline account. Like I said, it was me because I'm say something I say with my chest. I don't understand how. Yeah, you can be Enik out for a plethora of reasons. Our movement in the transfer market being too slow, capitalizing on big moments, not backing Poch, all this kind of stuff. Like, I am not entirely against anyone who is Enik out as long as you provide me with, a reasonable explanation. So when people are now protesting outside the stadium with Enik out posters, I'm just a bit like, what are you upset about in this scenario? Why are you Enik out when it's technically because of Enik and because of Daniel Levy that we are looking from outside? We're looking inside. We're looking from like inside the window. You know what I'm saying? We're not looking from the outside like we want to be in there, because I feel like if we weren't in it, there'll be protests that we're not in the conversation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how can you protest against the entity that has put us in this room in the first place to juggle with the big boys and to potentially have part of this, £6 billion injection from JP Morgan? That protest in itself didn't make sense to me. On top of the fact we're already in a global pandemic. Do you know what I mean? If there was no pandemic, I probably wouldn't give a shit about the protest. I'm not going to lie to you. And obviously, there's been many a protest in the last 12 months for many, many reasons. And I think everyone is within their right to protest about what they want. But this is not something you should be protesting about in a pandemic when we are in that room because of Enik and Daniel Levy. That's just again, utmost respect to We Are Tottenham TV. Great platform, you're doing your thing. But that was just something that it still hasn't computed in my brain many hours later.
Yeah, I definitely mirror that sentiment. I find it a weird phenomenon that like we get wrapped up in sort of trying to prove that we're virtuous individuals through our football club at times that don't really make any sense. It's like, obviously, over the pandemic, Tottenham Hotspur Football Club furloughed staff as a billion pound entity, right? That's something that I can get behind and say, all right, cool. That's just flat out wrong. But we've been asking for Enik to show some ambition. We did a whole episode about it. Wale background, all sorts. We're showing ambition. The ambition is to be one of the superpowers in world football. Whether or not that translates to trophies is by the by, because you get what you ask for. At the end of the day, like if we all banded together and just said, all right, cool, we're not going to the stadium anymore, we're not going to watch, we're not going to buy shirts, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, that would force a certain level of change. But nobody's going to do that. They're going to pay the flight to go to see Madrid. They're going to pay the flight to go to see Barca. They can say the game is gone. They can say they don't care about the fans, but ultimately it gives you those memories. Those same memories that you've been clamoring for. People are going to talk about season ticket prices potentially going up and all of these things. Like, not everyone has a fair crack at getting the season ticket. So how much for the fans is that whole process in the first place? I think if you're going to complain about it at the highest level, I feel like you have to pick holes all the way through, because ultimately at some point you're going to be called to question on whether or not you actually care about those things or whether or not you just care about the interests of yourself. And ultimately, I personally don't see how this negatively affects the fan unless we get kicked out of domestic competition, which I don't think will happen because Sky Sports don't have that much pull even when the propaganda machine is running. So
yeah, man, it's all come to a head now where there have been some valid points from fans that Enik and Daniel Levy have been very reactionary at times, and it's all kind of now looking promising. Like I do wonder as well what Todd Klein and his role has been in this. It says for fans that don't know, neutral fans especially, we hired a head of commercial revenue, I think his official title is, and his job is essentially to generate us revenue through commercial activities. And we recently announced a sponsorship with Deluxe. Not to gloss over that, we've now been entered into the European Super League.
That was a lot. I'm not gonna lie, Owen, that was a lot smoother than my one on the last show. I won't lie to you.
I just wanted to let it sit there as well.
I think it was your dry delivery, man.
That's my bag. That's my bag. You can't really do that on tweets. So.
Fucking hell, man.
And now with us being in the European Super League, we can now essentially put ourselves in a great position to do what Touchline was essentially brought in to do, which was secure us the naming rights to the stadium. If for those that don't know, he secured a very lucrative deal with Miami Dolphins, whose franchise I'm not even sure they're in, but apparently they're pretty doo-doo. But they managed to get this very lucrative sponsorship deal through Touchline with Hard Rock Cafe, and it helped them tremendously. So who knows, man? We'll get in. We'll get into, we'll see how it plays out. I just wanted to, before we move on to the morning news there, I did want to ask you, sir, I had been meaning to, with this format of the European Super League not having a kind of merit-based system to a point where you can qualify and or get relegated, and it mirrors a lot of the Americanized formats or the American formats with the NBA and NFL. How would you argue against, or how would you comment on a lot of the fans and people's kind of opinions that it will just eliminate competition and people won't be competitive or have an incentive to play to win?
Yeah, I genuinely don't agree with it. So this for me is separated into two parts. If the Premier League is still a playable competition for these teams, then I think it's been blown way out of proportion, because ultimately you just get a diversity of competition format, and for me that's always a good thing. Different strokes for different folks. If, for example, this was the sole competition that we played in and it was a full franchise model, I feel like people underestimate the purpose of sports. Sports isn't just about always being at the top. It is about the journey towards a destination. So yeah, in the early stages, that Real Madrid, Barcelona, those caliber of club are going to be the ones winning year in, year out. That's safe estimation. But naturally, as we've seen in the Premier League, there are always those outlier results. So if we think about the Champions League over the last however many years, we've played a lot of the biggest teams in the competition and made it to quarterfinal stages, semi-final stages, and a final. What's to say it couldn't happen within this format? The biggest difference is the fact that we'll get that immediate cash injection on top of what we've already done well to get ourselves to a position where we're overperforming. What's to say that we won't compete? For other teams, in terms of not being penalized for falling short, pride comes into play, commercials come into play, like sponsorship deals come into play. Like nobody pays high money for shit teams. Like they don't do it. They do it for teams that are performing. So ultimately, like, I think it's a little bit of scaremongering and a fear of the unknown. But ultimately, I think things will end up falling into a reasonable state at some point, just by virtue of the fact that in sports, the main driver is always to win. Everything else ends up coming secondary.
Beautiful. That was something I wanted to hear about personally as well, because the whole relegation and competitive side of it was a concern to me as well. So thank you very much.
Just a little bit.
Indeed.
Like, I'm not as well versed in the American sports as our courtside fracker representative. Check that one out. Any budding NBA fans, courtside fracker, sigh full of salt. But Mr. Wiltshire Crane has returned slightly more amicably, I must add, and the essence I'm gauging here is that he's asking us if we're sure that we want to be part of a franchise, and I've been thinking the same thing as Sai. I'm like, this isn't, obviously there's the whole thing about teams are being threatened with being removed from the league and players and can't go to the World Cup, which would have been nice if this was the attitude towards racism, because I don't know if anybody saw Carlton Cole's tweets earlier. You know,
Yeah.
people were asking him his opinion, and he's just like, look, like, you know, he's obviously. I think from what I was gauging, so I don't want to, you know, speak. I don't want to paraphrase him too tough and speak out of turn on Carlton Cole's behalf, but he was essentially saying like, he's not quite sure where he is with it. He doesn't think it's entirely right, but for him, it's always going to be, you know, equality in human rights before equality in football, as far as he's concerned. And I'm pretty much the same. I'm not going to lie. Spurs will never win in a franchise model. I'm sure. Yeah, Stephen Curry probably.
You know what? Do you know what the funny thing about that is the assumption. Like I played American football. I spent time in the US. The flipping Panthers made it to a Super Bowl. Like, who would have expected that?
Hello?
Like, come on, man. Like the franchise model. Again, yeah, we can say, oh yeah, the Patriots, Tom Brady always get to finals, this, that, and the third. But ultimately, you do still have outliers. So Spurs could win in a franchise model, given the fact that we've already shown that we're close to winning with an old institution model. So whichever the model, I have faith in my team to figure out a way to become successful. It's really that simple.
Yeah, like, and jokes aside, I do genuinely appreciate the engagement from Mr. Wiltshire Crane. It's like this is good engagement. But yeah, and just the whole, you know, Si, you said like it is possible. A lot of teams can be an outlier and pull it off. It's not as I'm pretty sure in the NBA. Again, forgive me wrong. It's 15 teams per conference, right? And in this one, it's 10 teams, and then I think it's the top 3 automatically go through to the next round. This is in the European Super League format. So the top 3 go through to the next round, and then 4th and 5th go for a playoff for the quarterfinal. So I'm not trying to, you know, reduce the task at hand, but all you got to do is finish mid-table, and you could get into the next round.
Exactly.
And then it's double leg knockouts. So, you know, I think that we're not gonna pretend there isn't, you know, potential, some kind of romanticism when you look at the qualifying, the teams that will have to qualify to enter. And, you know, on the flip side, I do appreciate that, you know, there's the argument that, you know, is the novelty of playing big European teams going to wear off because, you know, some players only get to play these people a handful of times, like, you know, Ian Wright, despite being an Arsenal legend, a lot of time for him, you know, he's the godfather of the streets, and he made a point. He was like, look, he only ever played against AC Milan twice in his career, but those, for it to be such a rarity, you know, we're respecting Ian Wright. He started his professional career a bit later than everyone else, etc. But, you know, I kind of understand where he's coming from in the terms of like it should be special to play these European nights, and I kind of get that. But what's to say in the future that's European Super League is still not going to be special? Do you know what I'm saying? And they did their research. They said apparently the younger fan wants to see the European giants playing each other more often. Apparently, I don't know who did the research. That's just what the European Super League said. You know, your argument is we want money, so we will sell the values of what makes football excellent. Again, Mr. Wiltshire Crane, what makes football excellent is different for different people. Like I love the underdog. I love the fact we went to Marine, even though we smashed them 8-0. I love the fact we had a guy who basically finished his GCSEs, make his debut and score a goal. I love the fact that we have a 16-year-old who is the youngest guy to assist in a European game since Kylian Mbappe. Not saying he's going to be the same, but you know what I mean? I love the fact that we went to Amsterdam without our best, potentially our best player ever, and somehow, some way managed to beat them and enter a final. Do you know what I'm saying? I love all of that about football. But I also love winning. I love the fact that my club has got into this conversation without breaking our backs in the bank, but we're now in the conversation. So, Mr. Wiltshire Crane, I hope that you don't feel like I'm being like facetious with my representation of your opinion, but it doesn't have to be as straightforward as we're good because we got the money on the way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of stuff that is important to different people. Have to agree with you there. We are different generations, might value different things, and that's completely fine, Mr. Wiltshire Crane. I appreciate your engagement as always.
Beautiful. And just on last thing on the incentive point, I was reading that the winner of this European Super League will get up to about 400 million, and then it will obviously trickle down depending on league position and where you came in the competition. But mad. Hopefully, Wiltshire Crane, you stick around as well, because I feel like we need someone feeding back to and forth from what's going on MNF right now. I've got it on mute next to me right now, and I'm seeing veins in both Carragher's and Neville's heads. So if there's anyone watching MNF as well that can kind of give us a little to and forth, if you've got any rebuttals to what we're saying, please feel free to engage. But back to us, I guess, not being reactionary for once. For once, I did not expect this to be coming this morning. So we woke up to the news that our underperforming Velociraptor had been relieved of his duties. Jose Mourinho had been sacked. João Sacramento, Mr. Press, had gone with the rest of the coaching staff. And it's been a long time coming. I feel like once the money was secured from the European Super League, or with with the foresight that we would get this money, they made the decision based on that, because there were noises coming out the club where it didn't seem like we had the money to pay him off, essentially. So what are your initial thoughts? I'll go with you first, Si. Did you think it came too soon? Would you have liked him to have been in charge for the cup final, because that was slightly odd timing as well? Or do you think it should have come sooner? I feel like I know the answer to this, but as always, I want to hear one of your engaging monologues. So take it away.
It's Christmas in Ramadan. I'm loving it.
So quickly, just before you get your monologue off, because I know this is a good time around that. Just last one on Mr. Wiltshire Crane. So you said, where you mentioned younger players, where did they come from? Grassroots, no doubt. How does this help grassroots football? Where is the trickle down? Now, interesting fact, one of my old lecturers, Dr. Mark Stone, is a strength and conditioning coach at Wigan Athletic Football Club. And that is obviously where we bought Alfie Devine. And it's not a secret that Wigan was struggling, monetary wise, like really, really struggling. And there's a lot of talk about they were obviously annoyed that they had to. I think Alfie was 400k, 500k maybe, and they weren't necessarily happy about it. But that 500k has kept Wigan afloat to a heavy degree. And Joe Gelhardt is a young striker who's in and people have been talking about at Tottenham, but obviously with those Dane Scarlets emergence, it might not happen now. But it's not just because that big $6 billion from JP Morgan is going to go to the big boys, doesn't mean it's not going to make its way down. Because I know if Wigan were on the verge of administration, no Premier League team is necessarily stepping in to help them out. But inadvertently, the money we gave Wigan to buy Alfie Devine has basically saved them. So I don't think we can say that money doesn't hit grassroots at all. But that is just one example. Apologies for interrupting you, Si.
It's all good. It's all good. I can't speak on the New York Knicks because my Brooklyn Nets are going to win the chip. So who cares? They're in the mud. We're not. Fuck it. But yeah, as I said, it's Christmas in Ramadan, mate. Like, I did not expect to wake up this morning, roll into the new office, get my new laptop, and then be alerted to Jose Mourinho leaving my football club. What's not to love? Me personally, I felt like it could have been done 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It's happened now. The timing is impeccable as far as I'm concerned, because I didn't want that man to go into the final, have a 50-50 chance of winning, and then be able to lord that over us for the rest of eternity. I'd rather leave it to the unknown and let that stew in that man's soul, so we can basically just say, yo, if he was here, he may have won, but he's not here and we still won. Like, that to me is the best outcome. As far as shiny new toys, I've been supporting the New Jersey Nets since 2001. So do your Googles. That's for Mr. Wiltshire Crane. But back on the Jose topic, for me, it's the best timing. It's the best timing because we could potentially get a tune-up game midweek and then go into the final with that new manager bounce, albeit with Ryan Mason at the helm, and basically just try and shithouse our way to a final victory with Ryan Mason potentially beating Pep Guardiola. That's romanticism in football, even though it's a shame that it's the League Cup because no one really cares.
Mad, Di Matteo vibes. Yeah, it was reported. There was, numerous reports from sources within the Athletic, and they put a summary together of what exactly went wrong. It was reported in the summary that players were left bored and untested by training sessions. Tactics were so obsessed with stopping opposition players, were unsure how to attack. I think a lot of fans knew that. João Sacramento wasn't rated. Also, you can pick that up from the documentary. Even
press.
You can tell when someone's rated when players just don't simply follow, let's see, the managers or the assistant's instruction, which was happening for a number of weeks. Mourinho ran out of allies on and off the pitch. Only Harry Kane was loyal to him in the end, although I feel like there was a few Instagram tributes to Mourinho in the end, which he put on his own story. Like, it's shock horror. His dismissal had nothing to do with the Super League. Now, this was the story that came out as well. There was a story which came out of a fake account which made its way all round Spurs Twitter, that he stood up against the European Super League, refused to take the players up for training, and try and paint himself the hero of pro football, anti-European Super League, etc., which was, I mean, bullshit from the start. I think Mourinho would have been kept in the loop to a point. He would have known about it, and you know, if he felt that strongly about it, he could have offered his resignation a lot earlier. And Ohio, like, how did you feel it all transpired with Mourinho coming to an end again just before a cup final? Did you think it was good timing? And I would imagine you think it was the right decision, but why, in your mind, it was right for Daddy to go so early?
I think I'm not gonna lie, the first thing that came to my head when I saw Jose got sacked, I was like, please let João Sacramento and the rest of the team also be gone, because you know, like we said, he is Mr. Press × 3. But also, you know, I did a bit of reading into Sacramento last week, so I was like, I definitely heard Donny's name in and around. Like, why did he have so much clout before? And you know, I think when where was Sacramento before? Wherever Bielsa was, I know Sacramento was with him, like in the backroom staff, and you know, Bielsa got sacked, and you know, Sacramento and a group of them, you know, stepped forward, and Bielsa was obviously trying to do the high intensity, like gegenpress, but also, you know, keep the ball. And Sacramento apparently has been getting loads of plaudits for years for playing defensive and then counter-attacking football. So him and Jose was obviously a match made in hell. So I think I'm glad that Jose was gone and Sacramento was gone. You know, I really hope there's no one listening to us that thinks we were happy to get Jose in the first place. You know, ever since that yellow black bar came up on Sky Sports News, sorry, that Poch had gone and Jose was in, my stance has never changed in terms of I don't think he's good enough, but it's always fair to give the manager a chance. You know, I can say I don't like the appointment, but I want you to do well. Like, I am always happy to eat my words if it means my club doing well. I have absolutely no shame, but I've said what I've had to say about Dele Alli for the last 2 years. If Dele Alli fucking pulls it out of the bag and slaps a hat-trick against City next Sunday, I have absolutely no shame in admitting I got it wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's for the betterment of my club. So with Jose going in itself, I'd been thinking for a while that he was gonna go maybe after the final, because whether we like it or not, I think he kind of deserved to have a chance at the final. Whether in my heart I believe that or not, from a moral standpoint, removing context of him as an individual or as a Velociraptor, he deserved the chance to take the final because he got us to the final. But it's difficult to remove the context of the previous Premier League games, the performances, all that kind of stuff. Because our performances, when was the semi-final? Were we not like
it was a time ago, man?
Like, I swear, weren't we top of the league when we got to when we got to that final? I don't know. We were definitely top 3 or something. So there was a part of me that like felt Levy's finger was itching on the trigger. I think his finger had been twitching for a while, and and I think Levy had probably decided in and of himself, if you lose the final, you're gone. But that's what I thought. It was definitely like a toss up of like a big risk in terms of it's hard to justify you sacking you if you win, you know, because what would have happened is if we won it, shithoused our way to it, finished 7th, ended up in going to the depths of Mordor to play a qualifier for the Europa League, and then maybe we sacked Jose, then it would have just been like, yeah, well, they sacked me, but they sacked the guy who got their own interest. That's what it would have turned into. We would have just become more of a banter club because we sacked the guy who gave us our first trophy in 13 years. So I think Levy's bitten the bullet. It would be silly to say the Super League news hasn't played a part in it at all. I do believe that Jose did the whole, I'm not going to train you guys because, you know, this is against football. It's like, bro, Jose, you've always been a checkbook guy, which is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with being a checkbook guy. But that goes against all the stuff that people are complaining about today in terms of, you know, like the meaning of football. You know what I'm saying? If you can slap like some of the prices that were floating around, like I don't even remember how much he spent on like Khalid Boularus and them, man, if he bought him. You know, Chelsea Hour might pull me up on that one if Jose didn't buy him. Apologies if I got it wrong. But it's not like Jose's been this self-sustaining, you know, big academy prospect kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? Like you've been part of this quote unquote problem in football. I'm not that bothered about owners coming into football because I like a good product as well as other things. But Jose's been part of this detrimental slide. So for him to not take training because he's against the Super League stuff, I think that's bullshit. Just I think he's done it to make himself look like a hero rather than the villain that he is. And I think Levy was just like, oh, you know what? Yeah, just fuck off. Do you know what I mean? After that, like, you've given me a reason now. You know?
Yeah. The whole appointment, as a top said, it's a mess. Like from the moment I heard it, the yellow bar, all of that good stuff, like I was distraught. I wasn't going to renew my membership, none of that, because as far as I'm concerned, like again, I love Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and all of the little nuanced things that we stand for. Right, I am a hopeless romantic in that sense. But at the same time, I think this was the first sign that, okay, cool, we're going to start operating like a big club, which is something ultimately I was looking forward to. But we just went about it in the wrong manner. We saw Daniel Levy twerking for Jose Mourinho in the documentary. Like he had courted that man and he needed that as his status symbol, and it flopped. So be it. The guy played terrible football, but we got results early on. Fine. I was buoyant at a point because it looked like we might shithouse our way for the whole season. Fine. But ultimately, the itching feeling that it wasn't a good fit was always the prevailing one. So for me, I'm glad he's gone. I hope he never steps foot back in the stadium. I think he should go to international management. Portugal might be calling.
You've said that from the jump.
Precisely. He's done at club level. He can't cope with the day-to-day running of a club because not everybody has the ability to just bankroll their way through the transfer market, and players aren't receptive to his style anymore. And that's been made apparent from Madrid onwards. Pretty much we've seen him consistently fall out with players. It's not a case of the little crumble happens. It is literally he goes through periods over the course of a season where he looks like a bully and he looks like somebody who is acting out of spite. And in any other profession, if you have a track record of doing that, you don't get big jobs anymore. But such as the name Jose Mourinho, the special one and all of that shit, he's managed to swindle his way to the Manchester United job and the Tottenham Hotspur job. And both of them have ended in pretty much identical fashion, albeit with United managing to get a little bit of what I wouldn't even call it silverware, to be perfectly honest. It's like gold-plated coins or something. Yeah, it's meaningless. His achievements over the last two jobs for me are pretty much meaningless. Like it's paper over the cracks. And I wish him the best at international management because I think he could have a good career in it. But yeah, club football, no more, man.
Man, yeah, for me, it was one of those things that where we did intend to make a big club move. We appointed him. This is before COVID as well, so we appointed essentially the best post Fergie Man United manager, who even living out of a hotel again achieved what he did, while being a whiny prick at the same time. But at the same time, I thought it would be a good fit for us. Essentially, through that, I accepted the football aesthetic would not be great, but at the same time, I was willing to sacrifice that from him. Like, I always felt like we needed a manager that had been there and won it before. If we were to kind of go all the way in some of these tournaments and leagues and cups. So yeah, that intent was good, but essentially it has just all fallen away. And how I saw it play out was, this season, I think we were unconsciously ahead of the curve when we did top the league. And what I mean by that is we didn't factor in, like a lot of the big clubs, we didn't factor in a lot of the mental and physical player burnouts from the Project Restart. So I felt like a lot of these teams who decided to play a high energy style fell off because they couldn't sustain it. They hadn't considered these burnouts in players, whereas we had a low energy style anyway. We had no form of press or counter press. So with that, we reaped the benefits. And when teams started to cotton on, like, I felt like the trend then started to be, okay, we expand less energy through manipulating, controlling the ball, keeping possession. Because at the end of the day, you can run the same amount, being like playing pragmatically, being an off the ball team, focused off the ball team. You can run just as much as you would be being a possession based team, but it's almost a placebo effect in a way, I feel, because when you're on the ball and you're in control of the game, you're enjoying your football more. You're not going to feel as tired. And I've seen that, like, Lampard couldn't adjust. He got sacked. Tuchel's now, he's adjusted really well to the Premier League. Guardiola, yes, he has the tools, more tools, bar none, than anyone else in the Premier League, but he's adjusted. Klopp tried to adjust, playing Thiago as a 6 to control, but they couldn't make it work. And to be fair, I think Jose, he did try to adjust. It just didn't work, man. Like, the whole Sacramento influence, we never really saw any of it this season.
Yeah, and that to me was the most worrying piece. It's like during Project Restart, I think me and you might have been the two leading the charge in saying there are actually modern footballing concepts being shown. We had the sort of lopsided fullbacks. We overloaded in wide areas. We would have a bank of 5 attackers spreading the width of the pitch. Those are the type of things that you look for in a modern footballing side, and we've seen none of it. We've just started to hope to be able to ping a 40-yarder into Son, make him beat a man and slot it in the back of the net. Like, and for me, as many brilliant goals as we've scored out of that, it's not sustainable. And over the course of a full season, it's not actually enjoyable either. I'm not here to just watch highlights of my football team. I want to see the work that they do in the training room and on the training pitch exhibited on the pitch. And for me, it's been months since I can actually say, like, I can see what they've worked on that is being put to good effect, and we are winning games because of it. Like, there's always a disconnect at some point during that chain, and that for me spelt the end for him a good few months back.
I think the end started, even though we were winning games after we conceded 3 goals in however many minutes to West Ham. Prior to that, like, we were actually, trying to attack. So not necessarily playing out from the back, but like you said, not that the lopsided fullback thing, it wasn't always coming off, but at least it was able to say, this is our attacking setup. This is what we're trying to do. These are the channels that we're going to take. When we got Reguilon and we thought, are we going to do the lopsided thing? Because Reguilon can attack. Like, we could actually have conversation about how we were going to attack, sort of thing. And I think we've said it a few times on the pod, ever since the West Ham game, it's just sort of felt like he was adapting, and he's thought to himself, no, I'm reverting back to type here. We can't concede like that ever again. I think the West Ham results shook him up quite a bit, personally. I think it scared the shit out of him. I think he thought, I can't let that happen again. So we're going to try and stick to just not conceding goals. And you know, a lot of the reports that have come out recently, it's been stuff like players are just getting frustrated with constant focus on, like, you know, not making mistakes in defense or constant work on defensive shape. The players are not. It's not even just that they're not used to that. Like, they aren't going to enjoy that because that's not why they were bought for the club. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe Højbjerg, because he's the general. But even then, I'm sure he was probably sick of it. And you know, it's a tough one. I think even in the Liverpool game, apparently there was just hours of focusing how to defend throw-ins and not how to attack Liverpool itself, not how to work on their own game. It's like, how do you expect players to be motivated to play on the day? Like, there's been a lot of discourse on Twitter about players don't care and they're not playing for the manager, and we should be lucky to play for Jose. And it's like, look, Jose now is not the same Jose from 17 years ago. This is the reality of the situation. Like, it's okay to accept that he has not kept up with the times, and it bit him in the ass, you know. And you know, the stubbornness and, you know, the motivational ways that he used with, like, you know, he said, when Lampard was 23, but he was a man, and 23-year-olds now. Yeah, 23-year-olds now are different. 10-year-olds now are different to 10-year-olds then.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
They've got more information, and
this is literally it. Like, people are more aware of their emotions. People are more aware of their own psychology. People are not necessarily going to react the same. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, just going to come out and say Luke Shaw. A lot of people like try and say that, you know, Luke Shaw's remontada, where he was like on the verge of leaving and then got back and he was down to Mourinho. A lot of word from inside the club is like, Luke Shaw just ended up ignoring him. Luke Shaw literally ended up ignoring him. Like, people can say what they want to say about Pogba's interview, but Pogba said straight up, I don't understand why he just turned on man for no reason. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, again, people try and put obviously Ndombele hasn't been good for the last few months. You know, it's not a secret, but people tried to say Tongi turned it around because Jose went with him to flip in the park to do a couple like suicides and bleep tests. I promise you, Tongi just probably ignored man and was like, "Hey, Sissoko, Aurier, let me just chill with you, man, for a bit. Let me enjoy my time here." People like to give Jose too much credit for turning players around, per se. Flipping Eric Dyer, I think Eric Dyer said, I think he had a shit game against Palace, and then he said something like, Jose come up to me and said in training, you were shit this game and shit that game. Do you want to play next week? And that motivated him. Where's that motivation for Eric Dyer now? He was making the same mistakes. Like, he was the same. Do you know what I mean? Like, so again, good luck to Jose. I'm not going to wish ill on man, but it was just never meant to be in the first place, if I'm being honest.
That's a very good point on the players as well, Ho, because there's a lot of talk on Spurs Twitter. There's a lot of talk even in our group chat, like what ratio of our kind of downslide has been Mourinho, how much has it been the players? And there's been more arguments from certain people that it's more the players, that we have shit players, and it's more the argument. There's more obviously speaking about is it Jose? And we saw after that initial spell, before the other teams cottoned on and caught up to us, that when things didn't go his way, he just did not know. He just did not know a way to alleviate pressure. And like you say, Aho, the psychology of younger players is definitely like there's a lot more awareness and access to information. They are different, and as kind of lefty liberal as it sounds, players need to feel that love. They need to be nurtured as to how they can improve, how they can not make mistakes, and how they can best fit into a team to play a certain way. And in the end, even though I was obviously for Mourinho at the start, I wanted to give him until January to see what it was made of, and from that point, it was looking good. So I have to admit, it just didn't work out, and it wasn't a good fit especially for the players that we have, because we do still have quality in this team. It's, as I say, I have to concede that one. And Tops has put a question in: what style will we take on now for the end of the season? Well, we'll get onto that because we have an interim manager now, and it's an interesting one because we've got a very experienced assistant in a way. So Tottenham have now announced that Ryan Mason and Chris Powell will be manager and assistant for between now and the end of the season, and will be taking charge of the cup final. And I've got to say, initially my thoughts were, okay, Ryan Mason, as the manager, like Chris Powell's a big man to be someone's assistant. Like he's been managing Charlton before. He's more qualified. He's got more experience. But I'm trying to see the thinking. I'm not too sure what it is yet from the appointment. Ahaya, what were your initial thoughts on the appointment of Ryan Mason and Chris Powell taking charge for the rest of the season?
I was like, okay. I did wonder who the interim was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be Ledley King, just because we've seen what happens to legends when they go back to their clubs. The Lampards, the Shearers. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason Vieira hasn't gone back to Arsenal yet. He's still trying to do his thing, and Henry probably won't. So I wasn't sure who it was going to be. Little bit surprised by Mason, mainly because he was head of youth development under 17s, under 23. So it surprised me a little bit. I would have low-key expected just Chris Powell to be the interim, even though I don't think when he managed Charlton, they were in the Championship, right? Were they League One? They were League One.
I think it was League One.
It was League One, and I think his most recent appointment might have been Southend. So it's not necessarily to say he's got Premier League credentials, but we spoke a couple months ago just about our whole our black coach recruitment drive, and I don't want to say Ryan Mason got the job because he's white. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just a bit weird. He's gone from head of youth development into the interim job when Chris Powell has the most coaching experience, the most managing experience, and he's assistant to somebody who hasn't been. I don't know. It was a bit odd to me personally. I do see a few benefits in there. He is 2 years younger than Gareth Bale. That's a bit of a strange one there itself. But from the stuff I've read that Mace has been saying, I don't know if this was said. I think this was said as he was appointed. He didn't say anything about Jose, but he had not good words to say about Bale. Obviously, that's his boy. Played with him before, but just talked about basically said that Bale was still world class. So there's certain players he's going to have belief in. And I wasn't a huge fan of Ryan Mason as a player. I do think we are naturally just going to be a bit more of an attacking team, because I think Mason's not stupid. You can't really be head of youth development and not really want to play forward-thinking football. That it just wouldn't work like that. You don't develop young players not to have the ball, not to play forward,
and not to express themselves.
Thank you very much. Exactly. So I think the likes of this isn't me saying that the next game is going to see Dele, Bale, and Ndombele. So I'm not saying all these men are suddenly going to play. But I think we'll probably just be a little bit better to watch. But to centre back to your point, not sure how I feel about the Ryan Mason appointment, in all honesty. But we've got a cup final in a week, so we've got to get somebody.
Yeah, because my initial thoughts are, okay, I'm so glad that, the timing wise, I'm so glad that we've done this before the end of the season, because I didn't want someone to come in and then have to try and implement their style on the team while trying to weed out the deadwood at the same time. And I know Sai's not going to like what I'm about to say, but when we sacked AVB, bear in mind, we hired Tim Sherwood, who was unbearable for parts of his tenure beyond belief. However, there were issues which needed to be dealt with in the squad at the time. There were players like Paulinho and Lamela and Soldado who were not performing very well at all. He openly came out, as cringely enough, in the media and said, okay, this team is waiting for a train. That's to paraphrase him, to come and pick them up and essentially show them what to do, show them the way, rather than get their head down, do it themselves, show a bit of character while wearing his gilet and giving it to supporters. Yeah, it was mixed, man. It was mixed, but great. So he bringing through players like Harry Kane, gave him his first appearances, playing Ben Taleb and Chadley centre mid, giving Andros Townsend more games. So, given the timing, I think now Ryan Mason and Chris Powell, though they can play style wise set the best foundation possible for the next manager to take over, I also feel like I think the biggest job now, because I don't personally care where we finish in the league now. whether it be 6th, 8th, as long as we finish above Arsenal, I do not care. My biggest thing, I think, is for them to be able to identify the deadwood and players who are not going to fit the plan for next season, because I think even the most sympathetic of Tottenham fans or the most apologists for certain players will be able to write a list down of players who we may need to sell and get rid of, and it will be at least 10 players, especially now we're playing in a Premier European competition. We need to be quite ruthless now, I feel. So would you say that Ryan Mason and Chris Powell can do that job in the way of landscaping the new side for next season and the new appointment? And do you think they can do it to good effect, so in the way that Sherwood arguably did?
You had to throw that one in to make me vomit a little bit. The only thing Sherwood did was make the word capitulate a colloquialism, because everyone started using it after he just drummed that in. It was like it was his word of the day or some shit. To be honest, I was doing a little bit of reading because I heard about it quite late in terms of the Chris Powell and Ryan Mason thing, and they're being described as like joint caretaker managers, which is a little bit more promising. I think in those two you might have more experience and then man management as a combination than you would have got with Jose and Sacramento. I think one of the things that they'll be looking to do is just recenter the team and just take it back to basics. Maybe start teaching these guys some of the things that they've had to unlearn over the last 17 months. Ryan Mason did play under Pochettino. He was there early on with all the new training methods and stuff like that. So he's seen what it takes to have that initial uplift in order to set the foundations for a progressive future. So I do think they'll be able to achieve that. With caretaker managers, I do think it's just more about the feeling around the club. It's about recentering everyone's energy to just be a bit more unified and sort of brush away some of the bad vibes, which again I think they can do, especially with somebody who is a little bit more, he's loved by the club at the end of the day, like whichever way we want to swing it, like whether or not we felt fondly about him during his time at Spurs, with the way his career's ended, you can tell that he has a real dedication and a love to the game, and that's easy to buy into. You're not dealing with grumpy old men. You're dealing with someone who's going to relish the opportunity to contribute to a club that he loves, and that in itself we see over and over and over again. That gives an initial spurt. So if we can just weather the storm for the rest of the season and sort of maybe have that one moment in the League Cup to say, okay, cool, the season has had enjoyable moments, then we'll be in good stead by the end of the season to say, okay, cool, like these are the players that contributed to this. This is the core foundation of the club. And with that Euro Super League money, we can start splashing the cash to get rid. Throw it up. Let it all fall out.
I've just got that mental image of 50 Cent driving away in his Mercedes, and just laughing with the cap backwards. Sorry, Ohio, you're about to.
Yeah, no, it's quickly. No, I love the meme reference for real. But my thing with, obviously, I want Mace and Powell. Look at me calling them Mace like we're dogs. I want Mace and Powell to like do obviously as well as possible, but I don't want this to be a Solskjaer situation where one League Cup and how many games we got left in the league? Like 6. One League Cup and 6 wins that somehow secures top 4. I know there's going to be a section of the families. We don't need Nagelsmann. We don't need Rodgers. We've got Mace. He's Tottenham through and he's Spurs through and through. I don't want to hear it, man. I don't want to hear it. Yeah, I don't hear that. Yeah, like honestly, I want that. I want that trophy. I want the top 4. I want it all. But we like. I think Levy is going to go to war with Bayern Munich for Nagelsmann. He's going to have to. He might lose. He'll definitely have a plan B. Levy's not stupid. you know, might have got a little bit infatuated by the local hoe that was Jose Mourinho. But it happens. Everyone loses their way to the occasional box, you know what I mean? But you know,
Not you.
not I. Not I.
No, not
Yeah.
I.
It just we just have to be smart. Whatever happens between now and the end of the season, like I would hope there is contingency. I hope it's not been a case of Mesa said, if I win it and I get this amount of points, like what we're saying. I really hope it's not that. I hope he just goes back to his head of youth development job, because that seems to be working. You know, we've got Levin. Obviously, I have to give Jose some credit. Like Lavinia come true, Divine got his debut, Scarlett come true. You know, now John come true, Tanganga getting more minutes, etc. But I think Mace has played I keep calling him. I've never called him Mace in my life. What the hell's going on? Fucking Mace. Anyway,
the real murder Mace.
Oh, when you said league, the cup final chance, so chanting his name, just calling him Mace.
Big Mace, bruv. But he's clearly played his part in the head of youth development. And that's a job where I take very seriously on Football Manager. So if he's on FM23, I'll be there in it. But I just hope he does his thing, goes back to his job as head of youth development. Chris Powell stays, you know, in and around, you know, the first team coaching staff, and we go from there with someone who will, you know, keep us at that big boy table that people think we don't deserve to be at, apparently.
Exactly that. And that was the main problem with Sherwood as well, because when all said and done, at the end of the season, he was saying throughout that he deserved his chance to become full-time Spurs manager. There was a huge section of fans that were having it, but I don't even think he truly believed it. Levy didn't truly believe it. And, you know, like, he ultimately ended up leaving the club with his delay. And yeah, I think it's safe to say that most fans would see this as purely an interim appointment and not full time. You did touch upon a name there, Ohio, and that name being Julian Nagelsmann. Now he's been hotly tipped for this Bayern Munich job after Hansi Flick announced he was leaving. I think also yesterday, so it's all been kicking off. Would he be your first choice appointment?
I think I'm not going to sit there and pretend I watch Leipzig all the time. That's my first thing. I'm not going to pretend. But from what I've seen of them, they are better to watch than we are. And it's one of those things in football. It's not that I'm not going to hang my hat and say, like, oh, yeah, he's unreal. We have to get him. But from people who are seemingly available, you know, and the way managers are spoken about, the way players are spoken about, you don't always have to watch a player or see what a manager's done to be sure that they're going to progress your club in potentially the right fashion. I think, you know, someone like Nagelsmann, as I say, operated on a tight budget. He does have the feeder club that is FC Salzburg. You know, that is a slight man want to talk about ethics, and they've got an unofficial feeder club sponsored by Red Bull, but they're not allowed to call themselves Red Bull, all this kind of stuff. So I think I've seen enough where, you know, what seemingly seems to be the Leipzig model, somewhat self-sustainable, don't splash like huge cash, you know, play, from what I've seen, somewhat exciting football, at least front foot football, not always waiting for the counter. Yeah, they got slapped up by United, but it happens, I guess. So I think of the people available, I think definitely so. I did want Rodgers. I would not be opposed to Rodgers. Just my only thing is that it just seems that Leicester might bottle top four again, and to do that almost back to back actually. And then the way he kind of bottled the title with Liverpool, like some would say it's a match made in heaven if Rodgers.
Yeah, say what you want about Spurs, but this Leicester team are looking pretty Spursy. But yeah,
some would say it would be a match made in heaven if we got Brendan Rodgers. But you know, I think Tuchel's taken like a duck to water to the Prem. I think the likes of
trick there, mate.
We should have been in there. Hindsight's 2020, obviously, but we should have been in there. I think a lot of our play. I think the likes of Ndombele will like thrive under someone like Nagelsmann. You know, it would put us in maybe a better standing to get someone like Sabitzer. And what I will say, even though I don't watch a lot of them, I like the way he uses Angelino. I think someone like Reguilon, who I feel like has maybe been rushed back a little bit early from injury, I think this is maybe his first season without a winter break as well. I think that's playing a little bit of a part in Reguilón's form currently, as we said on last week's pod. I think we could potentially play in a way that utilizes Reguilón a bit more in that final third, or even if Reguilón stayed and Sessegnon came, that could be something Sessegnon could enjoy as well. So I'm putting my hat on hopefully getting Nagelsmann, but we are literally going to fight Bayern Munich for him. So.
And Sai, who would your first choice appointment be? Would you echo that one?
It's hard to look past him just because profile-wise, I think he's the best fit and most realistic. He is most certainly leading the odds. That would be first choice. It's weird coming off Jose. Coming off Jose, like anything is possible. Like Allegri's just been chilling on his sabbatical. It's like maybe learning a new language or whatever. So he's not out of the picture. I don't think it's immediately a stylistic fit. Simeone was on the list, which I know a lot of people are down on him. But in terms of coming in and just shithousing our ways to victory and potentially like doing something silly, why not? Like anything for me is better than Jose. Let me just put it out there. Like if we're gonna do the negative football and anti-football, let's do it fully properly. Let's just do it wholehearted. Like none of this half-ass shit. So yeah, I'd say Nagelsmann would be the best choice, with one of those big managers as a potential like surprise.
I did not expect you to come out with some of those names. I have to say there have been some names rumored as well. There has been Allegri, there's been Maurizio Sarri, there's been
The Sarri one's not bad either, man.
I wouldn't turn my nose up at Sarri. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not turning my nose up at him. For
me, I haven't overanalyzed the whole Sarri Rubier. I just have a bad feeling on that one. For me, I wouldn't have Sarri. Sarri has a bit of a head teacher vibe about him as well, which Mourinho had. So I'm not sure about his man management as well as his on the field tactics. Allegri, I believe he may have evolved as much as Jose said he did. I think it'll be a crazy ask to go from Serie A to the Premier League. Although Antonio Conte done it to relatively good effect. But no, my first choice would probably still be Brendan, although I definitely wouldn't hate Nagelsmann. I've said
about Rodgers now, man.
It does look weird, doesn't it? I feel like with I did get laughed at in the Discord a few weeks ago. It was even a fair few months ago when I said Spurs have more ambition than Leicester. It's just been a case of obviously COVID's held us back from spending what we plan to spend and what we plan to achieve. But ultimately, I felt like we showed more ambition. I've said in the group a few times, even though it has been contested, it's fair to say that I feel like our team currently, with the players we have, suit a more three at the back build, because I do feel we have defenders who are at least comfortable carrying the ball. We need to protect our centre backs at all costs, because it's easy to say they are the weakness of our team, and we have controllers in midfield. They are able to do it under instruction. They definitely have the ability in Ndombele, Lo Celso, Winks and Dele. I feel like we would get the best out of them. Højbjerg as well. I feel like we're really going to see a Harry Winks from Remontada, as well as Dele under Mace and Chris Powell. But it will be cool to see. It'll be cool to see. We definitely have the players. We have the chance creation from wing backs for sure. It may even suit number 2 and get the best out of him as well as Aurier.
He went too far, man. Sherwood, Mace, Winks. Well, I like Winks.
We
but
have the money for a
number
right
three.
wing back now, so it'll be interesting to see what happens this summer. We definitely have the chance creation from left wing back with Cesc coming back and Reguilon, and I feel like with Son and Kane are essentially, in my eyes, luxury players now as well, and we need to give them the assurances to let them kind of stay at the pitch, give them the attacking assurances and the
Simeone
freedom to
ball.
do what they want. So yeah, I would not have Simeone's contract at Atletico Madrid as well. I think he gets something like 40 million a year.
ridiculous,
It
isn't it?
is insane. Even with this new money, I don't see us matching that. Even
I
if we
literally only threw that one out because obviously there were rumblings about whether or not he would be someone we looked at, and obviously the bookies love to do that thing where they just list everybody. It would be entertaining though, because I think stylistically, in terms of like the picture of seeing him walk out at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with the lights going and the dramatic music, I think it would be hilarious, man. It would look like the crypt keeper just walked in the joint, man. That guy's a weirdo. But if you're gonna do anti-football, you got to do it right. And
for me, I want to see us. I think it's imperative that we hire a manager who kind of comes back to give Tottenham its identity as well, because I mean we've all felt this disconnect from our team on the field for the best part of this season at the very least. So it would be great to see some of the core values of somewhat pleasing football aesthetic come back.
Push and run back.
Nagelsmann loves a bit of push and run, so there we go. I want to end with just one final question. We have touched upon it a little bit, but at the same time, it is a little bit of a curveball. So I'd like to throw it at both of you. Does Jose deserve credit for any of the players' improvements, namely Ndombele, Kane, etc.? There's been an upturn in Aurier. Does he deserve credit for it?
Would now be an appropriate time to just end the broadcast.
You have the power. Listeners, I'm the host, but Sai's on the techie stuff. His fingers hovering over that button as we speak.
I'll find out next time on the next episode of Absolutely Not.
No chance. No chance, man. Like, I think Kane was finding. Do you not remember when it was like, I think it was England versus Spain where they must have scored like 4 goals in the first half.
And Kane was dropping deep. Yeah.
He was dropping deep and playing QB, and he had Sterling and Rashford as wide receivers. Like, he was doing this before Jose. Jose just made this plan A. Do you know what I mean? Like, all we can say is Jose played in a way that made Harry Kane do that on a very, very regular basis as opposed to a semi-regular. So I'm not going to give... Yeah, there's the whole documentary thing. So I'm going to make you explode, all that kind of stuff. But it's been widely reported that a shitload of stuff got edited out, and the whole point of the All or Nothing documentary was to make Jose look like a good guy. That's quite literally what it is. Because there's stuff that's been coming out of the club saying that a lot of players felt like the identity of the club had been lost under Jose. So I can't really give him credit for that. Tongi seems like the kind of guy who like is quite chill in general, and if you're giving him ag, he's just a bit like, you know what, I'll give you what you want, but you know, I'm doing it for me, not for you. Like, I'm only doing this because you're annoying me now, not because you've inspired me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's more of a self-actualization, self-realization thing with Tongi. Aurier, I think, I'm not gonna lie, I think the Aurier thing was probably more down to the competition of Doherty, to be honest. He just thought, I'm not letting the white man take my job, basically. Essentially. I genuinely think those are the factors behind those three, you know. And the thing with Lavinia getting his debut, Lavinia was playing because Doherty was shit. Literally. Like, I think Lavinia could be a decent player, but I'm not going to give Jose credit for pulling up Lavinia, because if Doherty was playing well, Lavinia is not getting Europa League minutes. So yeah, the answer is no to all three.
The only one I'll touch on is Harry Kane. I think what a lot of people have mistaken is the fact that obviously Harry Kane came into the Spurs team having transitioned from an attacking midfielder 10 type of player, right? So it was more of a pleasant surprise that he was as prolific as he was than maybe some of the other elements of his game. And we benefited from the Pochettino sort of faith in playing this guy over Soldado. What ended up happening towards the end of Pochettino's reign, though, is he started to strip away the elements of Kane's game that made him special. So he started to play more as a fox in the box. We started to see him paired with other guys who were filling his position. Shout out to Lucas Moura. And these things almost served to the detriment of Harry Kane, to where he looked a little bit more leggy. He didn't look as involved in games and all of these things. Then when you factor in the injuries, we've never really seen Harry Kane fit for a full season to even post these type of numbers to begin with. So I think, as Ohio said, leveraging your best asset and making him your only option is not improving a player. What that is papering over massive cracks and basically putting all our eggs in one basket. Son has benefited from it, yes, but the likes of Bergwijn have suffered. The likes of Bale realistically haven't even been seen as a valuable enough asset to get on the pitch enough. The Delis of the world, the Lo Celsos of the world, like all of these guys ultimately would be able to fill a similar sort of space on the pitch if we had a style of play and a manager who at that time felt like they were worthy of playing football. So in a roundabout way, as I like to do, I've convoluted the point to say Jose Mourinho did not improve anybody. He just leaned very, very heavily on his Swiss Army knife and it shoved right into his... And now he's gone.
Yeah, it was even something that even while I was pro Mourinho, we did touch upon on the pod before, and it was a certain Southampton game where he got 4 assists, and you could even tell then he was just dropping deep, using his own initiative, and it might have been a case of Jose saying, "Oh, clap, keep doing that because it is effective." And he used his initiative because he needed to fill the void left by Christian Eriksen, which needed to be filled by some time. We didn't replace him directly with a player in the transfer market, so Kane took it upon himself because he simply had the ability. So yeah, I agree. I had to bring that up though. There was a fairly potent discussion on the Discord earlier, so I had to get your opinion on it. And that's all we have time for. We've
Ding dong, witches.
We've gone far longer than I thought we did. It was the emergency podcast that the streets wanted. Again, please, I'm on plug-in duties again. Check out the Discord again for further discussion, for further dances. Shout out again for Toby's emergency stream. Please check out the YouTube as well, because you do not want to miss out on the shapes being thrown here. But yeah, check out the stream on Toby's channel. Check out the Discord. Keep on checking out our stuff, man, because it's going to be an interesting few weeks and an especially interesting summer for us, man. So yeah, find out on the next episode of Spurs Touchline, aka the qualifiers of the European Super League, aka the Church of Tanguy. Please.
Bow.